Hey, all you beautiful ladies out there that are married or that long to be married. We have been reading from Created to Be His Helpmeet, and today we're going to be in chapter 4, Thanksgiving Produces Joy. Let's get into it. Live with thanksgiving, forgiveness, and joy, and enjoy all of your moments as if they were your last. My jolly playmate. You have control over whether or not you and your husband will be heirs together of the grace of life. 1 Peter 3:7. Or partners together in the tension and the stress of life. You have much more control than you know. As a general rule, my husband just doesn't take the trash out. I could be annoyed, or I could learn to enjoy taking the trash out. I'm smart. I have learned to really enjoy taking the trash out. One day recently, my husband saw me struggling out the door with a huge sack of trash in one hand and several empty boxes in the other. Since he was headed in that direction, he volunteered to carry the heavy sack. He walked about 10 feet ahead of me, holding the sack out from his body with one hand. I knew he was just showing me how strong he was. I was amused, as usual, with his display of manhood. After nearly 35 years of having me appreciate his muscles, you would think that he would tire of showing them off. But he knows that I have never got tired of watching him perform. When he got near the large trash trailer, he was really getting into his macho thing. With great fanfare, he flung, I would say toss, but it was like a sideways catapult, the large trash bag as if it were a cement block instead of a thin plastic bag too loaded down for its own strength. Of course, the string broke, allowing the bag to hit the side of the trailer, bursting open and dumping trash all over the ground. I could tell that he was a little embarrassed, and as I rushed to clean up his mess, but he continued on his merry way. I remember a time when all this would have irritated me to the point of bitterness. I would have made sure that he felt my irritation, and our relationship would have been strained. All for a bag of trash, such a stupid waste of our lives. But now, as I watched him humbly slink off, I had to grin. I think I have finally come to understand the male's side, at least this male's. I know that the dump trash bag was hard on the old boy. It is funny that men think that women are so difficult to understand, but you can imagine a woman flinging a heavy garbage sack to prove how strong she is, and then, having spilled it, leaving it for someone else to clean up. Having come to this lofty understanding of the male ego, I knew Big Papa would look for any chance to take out the trash from now on, and always do it right. His chance came about 2 weeks later, whenever I was heading out the back door with another heavy sack. I graciously showed my thanks as he offered to take the bag out. Just as he stepped out the door, I raced for the laundry room window. Quickly raising the window about 3 inches, I waited for him to come around the trash trailer, which is directly in front of the laundry room window. This time he carefully and gently pitched the heavy sack, and I was ready. Just as the sack left his hand, I let out a blood-curdling scream. You would think he would get used to my tricks after all of these years, but I got him again. I wish you could have seen his reaction. His t-shirt shook as if a strong wind had hit it, as every inch of his body quivered with shock. Of course, my own body was in spasms of wild laughter. It took him a moment or two to realize that the sack had landed safely and that the scream was in no way related to the trash bag that he had just thrown. I was so rattled his nerves with my wild war whoop that it seemed to take him a second to realize that I had done it again. Oh, it was a grand moment, until he turned to meet me, eye to eye, laughing eyes, and I knew I would have to pay for my rowdy entertainment. His addled brain came quickly back to the present, and he took off running back to the house at a speed the likes of which I thought he had long since become incapable. I knew there was no sense in trying to hide, because he would find me sooner or later, so I decided to use my innocent lady pose. I sweetly stepped in front of the sink and began to wash dishes, suppressing my laughter with great difficulty. He sounded like a Big Mac truck coming through the door, but I just kept my back turned and continued to wash the dishes. My demure stance did not stop him. He grabbed me by the arm and started pulling me into the bedroom. Since he outweighs me by 100 pounds, it was no contest, although he had to drag me all the way. I can only imagine what the office staff right next door might think if they had happened to drop by at that moment. I was ready with another scream just in case our very reserved business manager appeared. It would have been really funny to see the manager's horrified face. I can just imagine him thinking with horror, and they teach marriage relationships? Mike thought he was going to scare me with his show of force, but he was dragging me to my favorite winning spot, the bedroom. While he shut and locked the door, I quickly arranged myself in a very inviting, seductive pose. It gets him every time. It sure is handy being a woman. So he started smooching on me while I continued giggling for a little longer. He smooches better than he throws a garbage sack. Well, that's enough of this story, but you can see how much better a merry heart is than an ugly pile of hurt feelings. Make love fun. Mike is my playmate. He needs someone to play with every day. I'm his helpmeet, that is, I am his helper, suited to his needs. I meet his need for conversation, companionship, and playmate. Anytime we take a walk, we end up racing with each other. When we walk up hills, I grab his belt and he pulls just for fun. The other day we were walking up a steep incline, both of us pulling hard. He looked back to where I was and asked, "Do you need a pull?" "No, I can make it," I said. Wheezing, he presented his posterior to me and said, "Then push." We laughed to the top of the hill. It didn't make the hill any easier to climb, but laughter always makes life easier to climb. Most mornings we greet the day with what we call wallowing, which is a rolling around, alternately snuggling, tickling, and hugging wrestling match that on occasion ends in a real wrestling match or a king of the bed game where I try dumping him off. If he gets tickled enough, he loses his strength and I can sometimes get the best of him. I'm his playmate. He thinks I'm perfectly wonderful, not because I'm a beautiful woman. Those days passed more years ago than I care to remember. Our delight in each other did not happen because he is the perfect man, or because he loves me like Christ loves the church, or because he is sensitive to all of my needs. It didn't happen because he takes the trash out or cleans up after himself, or has always made a good living providing me with all the things that most women take for granted. It didn't happen because he is a strong spiritual leader and always does the right thing. It happened and continues to happen because of the choices that I make every day. I never have a chip on my shoulder. No matter how offended I have a right to be. And I do have reasons to be offended regularly. Every day I remember to view myself as the woman that God gave this man. This mindset helps me be just that, a gift, a playmate, a helper. Early in our marriage, we each made a commitment independently to please and forgive the other, no matter how hurtful the actions or the words that were spoken. Somewhere over the years, having goodwill and a merry heart towards each other has become as natural as breathing. We have learned that all of life is fun and needs to be shared with our best friend, playmate, and lover. This then is the rule of life for wives. Live with thanksgiving, forgiveness, and joy, and enjoy all of your moments as if they were your last. Someday soon, they will be. The marvel of my story is that it has been playing out for close to 35 years. No one would ever guess that the two old folks sitting at the corner table in the restaurant getting their senior citizen discounts would still be having so much fun. Yet, we continue to enjoy each other, playing, laughing, loving, and sharing. We have been heirs together of the grace of life, not partners in stress and bitterness. Our relationship has been a living testimony of Christ and the church. My husband has been my head, and I have been the body. He likes to remind me I am the body. At my age, this is not only funny to me, but should give you a chuckle too. This is exactly what God meant marriage to be between a man and his wife. It is the great mystery spoken of in the scripture. Webster's dictionary tells us that a mystery is something that is fitted to inspire a sense of awe and enigma. For two earthly beings here in this cursed world to have a joyful relationship throughout their marriage is truly awe-inspiring. Because I have known such love and closeness with a man, subsequently my understanding of God and my appreciation for him are much deeper. A relationship based on law, rules, willful humility, and formality is death. I have learned to approach God just as I approach my husband, with love, joy, and delight. From this day forward. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You think that it is too late for you. You are struggling on your second or your third marriage to an unbelievable porn addict, or you are suffering through emotional scars from your godless youth. I want you to know something wonderful about Jesus. With him, it doesn't matter where you have been or who you have been with, because his love and forgiveness can reach down and make you whole. He is willing to love you and make you his bride, just as you are. And he asks you to be a bride to your husband, just as he is. When a weak sister fulfills her divine purpose of being a true helpmate, it brings great glory and joy to God. Do you remember the great story in Luke 7:38, where the former promiscuous woman intruded upon a private dinner at the Pharisee's house? She hurried to where Jesus was seated and fell down behind him, weeping at his dusty feet. Her intention was to anoint his feet with costly ointment, but her tears of repentance and gratitude fell upon his feet. I think she was shocked to see that she had defiled him with her tears, and finding nothing at hand with which to wipe them away and rectify her intrusion. She unbound her long hair and used it to wipe away her unworthy tears. The Pharisees were sure that if Jesus knew who and what she was, he would not have accepted her devotion. But they didn't really know Jesus. Jesus turned to the lady and said to all of those present, "Wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but whom too little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And he said unto her, Thy sins are forgiven. Thy faith hath saved thee. Go in peace." Luke 7:47 through 48:50. Gratefulness. Dear Debbie, I wanted to send my testimony because you have greatly encouraged me. I sent it with my husband's approval. As a young child, I was messed with by my family members and non-family members alike. I don't ever remember feeling pure. At age 4, my parents divorced and my mother had custody of us. I think my mom just gave up when they divorced and she didn't take care of us. We were left to ourselves for the most part. We were dirty and unkept. Because these things took root in my person, I never really knew what it was like to be loved. God certainly couldn't love me because I was so dirty, inside and out. I didn't just think that in my head, it was the way that I lived. After I was married, I experienced deep personal pain in my marriage relationship, my husband's adultery. It was awful. I reacted terribly toward him. I defied him, used it to get my own way, and tortured him with it. You name it. I did it. The only thing I didn't do was leave him. We went through much hurt, anger, and bitterness. I had great difficulty trusting anything or anyone, and even God. I asked God if he would please show me one way that he loved me. I felt bad for even asking in light of the fact that he had sent his only begotten son to die for me. But I did ask, and God answered me. That night I went out of the living room to pray, and God opened up a small part of what had felt like heaven to me. He reminded me that he loved me whenever I was that dirty, ill-mannered, messed with child. Here is how he did it. There was a lady in our neighborhood who was a Christian. Whenever I was 5 years old, I was wandering by her house one day with a dirty cookie in my hand, and I offered it to her. She accepted it and took me on her lap and told me all about Jesus, creation, and how Jesus will come for us one day. It was God's lap that I sat on that day. It just took me years and years to know it. Because God loved a dirty little girl all the while I was going through public school, I never believed in evolution. I had a basic knowledge of Jesus Christ, sin, hell, and heaven. God had laid a foundation in my life whenever I was rejected, a lonely child, that would one day lead to my salvation through faith in Jesus Christ and his finished work on Calvary. That lady Also took me to church with her for the next 5 years. She was a true vessel for God's love. There came a time during all of our marriage troubles that I knew I was stagnating. I got on my knees and began to pray, asking God to make me grateful. That Sunday at our church, the ladies from the roll-off homes were there. Roll-off homes take in troubled, drug-addicted, or street ladies who come for help. God began to remind me where He had brought me from and what He had saved me out of. About the time that God was doing this, our pastor asked the ladies of our church who would to come and stand with the roll-off ladies, because really, but for the grace of God, we could have been standing where those ladies were. I had went and stood with them, and we all began to sing At the Cross. I began to weep, thinking of the miry pit that God had rescued me out of. The roll-off ladies put their hands on me to comfort me, who should have been comforting them. I silently thanked God for making me grateful and thanked Him for doing it so gently. Being grateful and thankful is the key to spiritual victory. It was at this point that the battle turned. There came a time when God dealt with me about my bitterness towards Him. I had carried bitterness towards Him for not protecting me while I was a child, and when I thought that He should have. He showed me that He hadn't shielded Jesus either. It was a battle to lay it down and trust that God would do the necessary things with it. I learned a good lesson about bitterness. It drives everyone away. I was now willing to let God have it. The next few weeks, I noticed that I had freedom to go to God with everything. Who would believe that now I want to be married to my husband, that I like being around him and spending time with him. I enjoy talking to him and enjoy the fact that he balances me out so well. Who would believe I'm looking forward to having more children with him, Lord willing. Some people would say I'm weak and foolish or extremely codependent. What people think is nothing compared to what God thinks. I know that God has brought me out on the other side. I don't know what the future will bring, but as a woman of old, I'm trusting in God. He is up close and personal now, and I'm learning to rest in Him. I love Him. He has not done anything in my life as I thought He would, but He has done exceedingly above all that I could think of or ask of Him. Sarah. This message to you is simple. From this day forth, starting right now, today, be the woman who honors, obeys, and loves Jesus by honoring her husband. Thanksgiving produces joy. Open your mouth and begin to thank God for His grace towards you. Thank Him for every good thing that He has brought into your life. Thank Him, and thank Him again. Joy is the result of a thankful heart. A thankful heart is the result of a person who decides to give thanks. So say, thank you, God, for. Time to consider. Traits of a good helpmeet. She is joyful, she makes love fun, she is thankful and content. And let them sacrifice the sacrifices of thanksgiving and declare His works with rejoicing. Psalm 107:22. But I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving, and I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord, Jonah 2:9. Getting serious with God. Joy is often lacking in a woman's life because she is not thankful. For the Lord shall comfort Zion, He will comfort all her waste places, and He will make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness shall be found therein, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. Isaiah 51:3. All right, y'all, and that includes chapter 4, and I will see you next time with chapter 5. Bye.